They destroyed the political will of the nation when they assassinated John F. Kennedy, which has furthered their goals because it made a lot of people feel so helpless that, God, if they can kill the president, who am I? You know, what can I do? I'm just one lonely, helpless person. So they quit voting. They abdicated their power. And, of course, through agents like Robert Groden and many others, Oliver Stone, they're being convinced that our government sucks, that our government is the problem, that the Constitution doesn't work, that the Bill of Rights aren't real.
We're playing right into their hands, in other words.
We're playing right into their hands because there's nothing wrong with the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or our government.
It's the people.
You see, it's been infiltrated. And from within, they are eating at the heart of this nation like a cancer, this secret society. They are destroying it. They are subverting it. Our Constitution has not been allowed to work since 1945 and maybe even earlier. And they have been working behind the scenes to bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist government with the Communist Manifesto as its platform through the United Nations, which was created by this nation from an older organization called the League of Nations, which was the original foundation. And at the highest levels of our government, the Constitution's already been scrapped, and they are working under the aegis of the UN Participation Act and the United Nations Charter.
Which says what?
Which says that there are no rights, there are only what you call privileges. And privileges can be granted or taken away at will by the state.
Quite frightening scenario.
It's a very frightening scenario, and people better wake up to the fact that unless they wake up and do something about it now, there's only going to be one alternative. And that's either take up arms, restore the Constitution, and the blood will run in the streets of America, or reach down and put the shackles around your own feet and march off into slavery peacefully. Not going to be easy the coming years. If people just wake up and exercise what was given to us in our Constitution, the power of the vote, while we still have that power.
So you say there is still a possibility for like one individual watching this tape to actually make a difference?
You better believe it.
How would that be so?
Well, number one, learn what the truth really is. Get away from the fantasy that you've been living. Educate other people, those you know, your family. Once that begins to happen, it spreads. And then if the people decide that they don't want what they have in store for us planned, just through the power of the vote, they can make this country and the world whatever they want it to be. Whatever they want it to be. And there are no limits on that, except to understand that you can never make everything all right, and you can never make everything all bad. Both must exist, and we must maintain a balance. Mm-hmm. And we must become responsible. If each individual on this earth learned to walk in a divine state of grace, responsible for themselves, their family, their city, their state, their country, and for the world.
And to the laws of nature.
And to the laws of nature. And actively participate in solving the problems of yourself, your family, your city, your state, your country, and the world. There could never be a group of men meeting behind closed doors in secret that could ever control anybody. But by abdicating responsibility, by not walking in that divine state of grace, makes possible anyone meeting behind closed doors to bring about the world that they want. And the world that they want may not be the world that you want, or that I want, or that these people watching might want.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't participate, you can't complain. If you don't help cook the meal, you got no right to bitch about it. You got to sit down and eat what's put on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like that, then you should have been in the kitchen helping to prepare the meal, helping to plan it, helping to prepare it, helping to serve it. If you want to sit on your butt in the living room while somebody else prepares the meal for you and decides what it's going to be and puts it on the table, it's too late to say that's not what you wanted to eat. It's too late to say it's not cooked the way you wanted it to cook.
Well, that's very simple to understand. And
That's right. You got to eat it because you have to eat to live. And I think that anybody can understand the meaning behind that little story.
Okay, let's take a step back to the Kennedy thing now.
This is all about the Kennedy.
Well, yeah, it is. But just specifically about, once again, I want to bring up the film as well. Another thing that came to my mind when I viewed it is that the two Secret Service men, the driver and the person sitting next to him in the front, regardless of what they claim happened, obviously did not operate in a way that you were trained as a Secret Serviceman to protect the president. Shouldn't they have just driven that car right out of there, and the other guy should have done something to protect or look for who's shooting? You know, it just didn't seem to make any sense. How would the Warren Commission not? They didn't see the film, so I guess
they didn't see the film by design, because if they saw the film, they'd have to be responsible for the decision that they made that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone assassin.
Okay.
So I think they didn't see the film on purpose because they didn't want to have to be responsible for saying, "Hey, look, the driver did it." You know, they didn't want to make that decision. And in a letter that Lyndon Johnson wrote to the Warren Commission, he specifically said in the letter, you must quickly identify Lee Harvey Oswald as acting alone with no conspiracy so that America can get back to business.
Was Lyndon Johnson acting on behalf of this secret society, or was he concerned
of course.
with...
He had to know all about it and approve of it because he was going to be the new president. And the new president would be in charge of the investigation.
How high up a government official do you have to be before you're briefed of this, you know, the total of all the things that are going on, the reality behind them?
Well, you have to understand that nobody exists on a high level in government who's opposed to the New World Order. Nobody. Our government has literally been infiltrated. And there's a cancer within our government destroying it, eating it, nibbling away at it, hacking off its limbs.
And you said this started in 1945?
1945 was when the overt destruction began to occur, when Truman signed the UN Participation Act and the United Nations Treaty. It actually began long before that, when these secret societies began to infiltrate the government and appoint their members to important posts. Infiltration is easy. If one gets in, he can then appoint and hire others to replace people who are not members below him.
So now we've had over 50, almost 50 years of this going on.
At least. I believe that it started back probably 1913, 1917, when the Federal Reserve Act was passed, when the Council on Foreign Relations became a reality in this country. And you can, by diligent research and study, you can see when it happened, where it happened, who did it, and how it was done. It's apparent. When they say there's no conspiracy, I mean, we talk about a conspiracy. It started out as a conspiracy. But when they say today there's no conspiracy, that's not a lie. It's the truth. They're doing it right out in the open, right under our noses, and we're too stupid to know it, to see it. So it's not a conspiracy now today at all. It's right out in the open. They even published their plans. I mean, here Carter appointed Zbigniew Brzezinski as the National Security Advisor, who just wrote a book before he was appointed declaring himself a Marxist. I mean, you read that book, this man believes in Marxism. This man is a socialist. Not only a socialist, he's an international socialist. He's a globalist. His goal, stated in his book, is to destroy the sovereignty of nations and bring about a one-world Marxist government.
Now, the Carter administration was one extreme, and then we came into the Reagan administration, yet...
nothing changed.
Nothing changed. What you're saying is that no matter what the political leanings, they seem to be playing the same game.
As long as you're playing their game, it doesn't matter who you vote for, who you put in office. They all belong to the other side. They're in the pockets of the Illuminati. When you quit electing professional politicians, when you quit electing the guy who looks nice on television because he speaks good and he looks like the guy you wanted to marry or something like that, you're playing right into their hands. You know, they've made it so impossible for another Abraham Lincoln to get elected to the office of president, that it's a wonder that we even have a chance at all. We need to send people to Congress and to government who are going to clean house. Kick all the members of secret societies out of the bureaucracy. Lock them up. Try them for treason. Because they are traitors.
So one thing that may help is term limitations.
We must have term limitations, and it must be only one term. And forget all this nonsense that anybody goes to Washington and don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening simply because they haven't taken the time as citizens to understand how our government works before they ever go to Washington. You see, it should be a process that starts in infancy. It works its way up. And everybody should be taking part in the government.
Now, if someone came in to office with this kind of knowledge and with this kind of intent to really push these people out, would they not be eliminated immediately?
Not if they have the people behind them, because what the people would do in one fell swoop, in one election, would elect people who've never served in government before, kick the incumbents out, send citizens to Washington. And here's the way it has to be done. You know, right now, you don't even pay your congressman. You know who pays your congressman? The federal democracy of the District of Columbia. The federal government pays your congressman, who's supposed to be representing your state and you. The federal government is a foreign country to your state. Why should he represent you? Not only that, but he moves to Washington, D.C. He maintains a residence here, but he doesn't live here. And as long as you re-elect him, he continues to live in Washington, D.C. forever if you keep re-electing him. So they lose all touch with what's back here. They're paid by a foreign government, the federal government. They're not paid by the sovereign state of Georgia or by you. They have to be paid by you. And they have to live here. They can't move to Washington, D.C. They go to Washington, D.C. for one term. Okay? One term only. When that term's up, they have to come back. And you don't pay them exorbitant funds. You pay them just enough to live on comfortably while they're there. No fancy giant cocktail parties, none of this crap. And you take care of their family. See, they don't take their family either. That's the other clue. They leave their family here, where they live. You, the people of Georgia, take care of their family and their business or their farm or whatever it is they have while they're gone. Now do you think they have a vested interest in representing you? They sure would under those conditions. Yeah. But under the conditions they go under now, they have no interest whatsoever in taking care of you.
Now let's look at the current...
They're taking care of themselves.
The current crop of presidential candidates. Is there anybody even running that represents something that we're talking about here?
No, all of them are New World people. Tsongas, in his book, everything that he's written touts the New World Order. All of it, right for Tsongas' literature. You're going to see New World Order, New World Order, New World Order, New World Order. Clinton, the governor of Georgia, was selected in 1991 by the Bilderberg. Governor of Arkansas was selected in 1991 by the Bilderberg Group in Baden-Baden, Germany, to be the new president of the United States. Remember what happened to Gary Hart? What did he do? He went out on a boat with a woman who wasn't his wife, and he was destroyed. Look at Clinton. What's happened to him? Nothing. The press is on his side. They're helping the guy. You know why? Because he was chosen by the people who own the press to be the next president of the United States. Now, I don't know if he will be or not. That's up to the American people. But if they get their way, he will be. Bush is one of the most heinous criminals that's ever walked on the face of the earth. Bush is the man who's been a CIA agent since his college days. He's a member of the Skull and Bones, the Russell Trust. He is the man who, when he was chief executive officer, when he was president of the offshore division of Zapata Oil, organized and began the first large-scale drug smuggling operations into this country. George Bush is the one responsible for the drugs on the streets. And the war against drugs is not a war against drugs, it's a war against the Bill of Rights. We've already lost the Fourth Amendment in this war.
That's true.
And we're going to lose everything else. You watch on, it amazes me, people watch on Saturday night, cops, top cops, tough cops, 911. All of these stories that are glorifying the police state, and they're falling right into the manipulation as they watch police with no search warrant, with no court order, break down people's doors, tear out their walls, rip open their mattresses. All in the name of the war on drugs.
Pretty sneaky.
It's pretty sneaky, all right. You see them stop people in the streets, and the guy's got $400 in his pocket. They don't press any charges. They didn't even have any reasonable suspicion to stop the person and search him. And what do? They take their money. And they don't give it back. And America's watching this. And the stupid idiots, yes, you stupid idiots, you sit there and watch it, not realizing that when you take away that man's freedom, you've also taken away your own. You see, because they can do the same thing to you. Just because you talk a way that they don't like you talking, or because you wear red shoes and they don't like red shoes, they can do the same thing to you. And under the new law, without a court order, without a search warrant, they can break down your door, they can rip open your mattresses, your couches, your walls, they can trash your house. All in the name of the war on drugs. And let's say they don't like the color of your shoes. All they have to do is drop a little pouch of cocaine in your living room, behind your couch, and find it and say, aha, you're a drug dealer. What happens then? Now they can confiscate your house, all your possessions, all your property, all your bank accounts, all your cars, boats, vacation cottages, whatever you have. And they can auction it off within 24 hours without ever even pressing charges against you. Without a court order, without due process, without just compensation. And there's not a damn thing that you can do about it. Not a damn thing.
At least right now.
At least right now. And the reason you can't do a damn thing about it is because you're the one who brought it about through your stupidity. You're mentally crippled. You're operating from a position of ignorance, apathy, abdication, irresponsibility. And we're losing our country, our freedoms, everything.
Now, these are strong accusations of the American public. What do you hope to accomplish by angering the very audience that you want to watch and listen to you?
Go prove me wrong. Go make me the idiot. In so doing, you're going to find out what the truth is, and maybe you'll wake your up. And if you do, maybe we can save our country. Because I don't really care at this point whether you get mad at me or not. My country's disappearing. My freedoms are disappearing. My daughter's going to live as a slave in the New World Order if you people don't wake up and help me.
How about the European community? Here seems, based on your theory, another group of sovereign nations coming together to form one government.
The European community, the EEC, was created by the Central Intelligence Agency, working through a lodge in Italy called the P2 Lodge. Propaganda 2 is the name of it, which is the intelligence arm of the Vatican. And Prince Bernhard, who is the leader of the secret World Council that controls these secret societies around the world, called the Bilderberg Group. And that's the truth of the matter.
And well, during its creation, they just threw out Margaret Thatcher. She was really opposing this.
Yes, she was, and that's why she got ousted.
Okay.
So did the Shah of Iran. So did Marcos. Anyone who opposes it gets ousted. That wasn't an overthrow of Marcos by the people in the Philippines. It was organized, instigated, and carried out by agents of the Central Intelligence Agency and the KGB. The overthrow of the Shah of Iran, our intelligence community is trying to tell us they didn't know anything about it. They didn't know what was happening. Bullshit. They organized it. They instigated it. They are the ones who caused it to come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
You see, because we didn't have a National Security Agency or a Central Intelligence Agency before the UN Participation Act was signed. And these organizations were created to bring about the one world government, the New World Order. And it had to be done in a manner that the people would not know that it was being done, and the only way they could do that was hide it behind the veil of national security. And the Cold War was a manipulation maintained to bleed the people of tax dollars to fund the creation of the police force of the New World Order, which is the Army, Navy, and Air Force and Marines of the United States and the Soviet Union. And the people didn't rise up in the Soviet Union and overthrow communism. It came from the top down because it had to be done. There has to be a bringing to the same level of all the peoples of the world to approximately the same political viewpoint, so there's not big disparity in order to be able to justify the merger of all these countries together.
Well, who now is ruling the forces of the former Soviet Union? You have Yeltsin in now. As Gorbachev supposedly went down, but we're not sure about that.
Well, let me tell you this. From the beginning, there was never any war between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was created by those at the top to fund the New World Order and the New World Order's police force. At the highest levels of all countries, they all belong to the same club. And we, the people, sit back and we watch this grand drama which is being played out for our benefit, not theirs. If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't even have to do any of this. But you see, they just can't come out and destroy all of us because they need slaves. They need people to make their shoes and make their cars and mine the ore. They need worker bees, and that's what we are. In the New World Order, we will be the worker bees, the slaves.
So the Orwellian view of the vision of the future wasn't too far off based on this scenario.
George Orwell was just like me. He was a low-level member of British intelligence who was appointed to a position high enough where he saw the same documents that I saw. And he tried to warn the world just like I'm trying to warn the world, only he wasn't willing to take the risk that I'm willing to take. So he wrote it in a book called 1984 and spelled out exactly what's coming as a warning to the people of the world, as a work of fiction. But you notice that that work of fiction really stirred people up because they knew that it wasn't fiction. In their heart of hearts, everyone who's read that book knows that it's coming.
It's a possibility.
Most people won't recognize it overtly or publicly, because then, if they recognize it, they have to be responsible to do something about it, and that's what every one of you have been resisting all your life, is being responsible to do something about it, to get involved. That's why you'll walk away from a girl being raped on the street by a gang of thugs rather than go and try to help her. And I'm not talking to all of you. I know there's some of you out there just like me, but most of you are just exactly what I've just described. Most people are no better than animals who do not have intelligence because they don't use their intelligence. And to these men who control things behind the scenes, you are stakes on the table by choice and consent, and will always be ruled and manipulated and enslaved by people who do use their brains.
As long as we're debunking some myths, because it's putting pieces of this puzzle together, I think, for a lot of people that may be watching. The hostage situation in Iran that got Carter out of office, is this another orchestration? And if so, how does it fit into the
October surprise is no myth. There was a deal made. There was a deal made at the highest levels to keep the hostages until after Reagan was elected. Do you really believe that it was an accident, that it was a coincidence, that 30 minutes after Ronald Reagan was sworn in, took his oath of office, the hostages were released?
Did they want Carter out?
Are you really that naive? I can't believe it.
Did they want Carter out?
Yes, they wanted Carter out. They wanted Carter out.
He wouldn't play by the rules? Or what was
I don't know why they wanted him out, but they wanted him out. Carter was ineffective. He did not have the support of all the American people. They need people who can manipulate the American people so that they have their support. My message is to you is don't support anybody unless they're doing what we know to be right. Don't believe them. Don't fall for the manipulations. Double check everything they say.
And that means you can't rely on the media as it is today either.
Oh, of course not. All the media in this country, radio, television, and print, is all owned by 5 corporations. All of these corporations that own the media are owned and controlled, and members of the Council on Foreign Relations sit on their board of directors.
Can you name those 5 corporations? Is that...
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I could try, but I don't want to take a chance on being inaccurate. But you can trace that yourself.
Okay.
Remember, if you go down and you trace the ownership of a station or a newspaper, and you get to a corporation, remember that somebody owns that corporation, and it's usually another corporation. But when you trace the interlocking of all these things, when you get to the top, there's 5. And all journalists know that there's some things you don't write about and you don't talk about because you'll lose your job. And that's where the control is. And that's why they pay anchormen like Dan Rather $2 million a year, because he doesn't question them. He knows that if he goes against them, he's going to lose $2 million a year. Do you think a man that looks pretty and sits in front of a TV camera for the 6 o'clock news is worth $2 million a year? No way. I don't care how long he works, and I don't care what he does. There is no job worth $2 million a year. That's why they pay athletes these fantastic salaries. I was listening to the radio the other day. They just contracted to pay one player on one team $6 million a year. Can you believe this?
And why is that?
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. And he begins to throw the Christians to the lions. And he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. That's why they pay a player on a football team or a baseball team $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year. It is the Roman circus. I know men who don't know anything in the world except who plays third base for the Mets. And they think that's a great accomplishment. And they meet and pat each other on the back and bond and go have cocktails and talk about what this guy that plays third base for the Mets did in last night's game. It's sad. It's really sad.
Is there any room in a kind of society where these manipulations are not taking place for this type of entertainment, or any type of entertainment at all?
If people understand that a game is a game, if people understand that nobody, no matter what they do, is worth paying $2 or $3 million a year for, people should be able to get rich if they want to, by the sweat of their individual labor. Okay? By going out and doing something for the world. Not by taking people's minds away from the emperor. It's a game. Football's a game. Football's a game. But let me tell you something. When 150 of the most powerful men and women in the world can meet in secret in Baden-Baden, Germany, and plot the fate of billions, and nobody even cares about it, but 6 football players go to lunch together, and it's in the headlines across the country, you have a reflection of the society in which that exists. And it is a sick society that is doomed to self-destruction.
So based on that scenario, there's some truth into what these men are looking at.
Absolutely, and that's what makes me so sick, is that I'm trying to wake up a people who on a daily basis are proving the ones that I'm warning them about to be right.
Well, so that even though a minority, there are people out there that you recognize are awake to this, if they don't do something about it, they will lose that ability to be free in that way.
That's correct.
Whether they might think, well, I don't need to worry about it because I know what I know and I'm fine. It doesn't work that way. There's a connection here to everything.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. A nation of people who are willing to send their sons and daughters that they profess that they love to a foreign country to die, and they use the excuse to themselves that they're sending them off to defend our country, and they know damn well that's a lie, are doomed.
It's funny. There's a parable. You said Ben Franklin earlier was even a part of this.
Yes.
A parable of Ben Franklin. I don't know if you're familiar with it. He paid too much for the whistle. He came up when he was a young boy. Are you familiar with that parable?
No, go ahead.
When he was a young boy, he was given an allowance, and it was a decent amount of allowance, and he was going to the store to get a toy. He was very excited about that, and along the way he met some boys who had this whistle, and he saw that, and he saw the little boys blowing this whistle, and he thought, wow, the greatest whistle, this is the greatest toy. He really wanted this thing. So without asking, he gave all his money away, to these boys for this whistle, and he went home, and sure enough, he got very bored with it, and he had no more money to buy something that was really, worthwhile to him.
Sure.
And so from that point on, he had a saying that said, don't pay too much for the whistle. And I think somehow that relates here.
He's also the one, when the Constitutional Convention was finished, when they wrote the Constitution and signed it, when it had been signed, he walked out the doors. Someone outside, I forget who it was, I believe it was a reporter for one of the newspapers in the 13 colonies, asked him, he said, "What have you wrought, Ben?" Ben looked at him and he said, "A republic, if you can keep it."
He knew. He did.